Welcome to Beyond the Launch, the podcast that explores what really happens after the deal is signed and the product goes live, because real impact doesn't come from implementation alone. It comes from intentional, strategic customer success. Hosted by Ivan Whitaker, an experienced executive in sales, customer success, and implementations, including complex 911 and public safety implementations. This podcast goes beyond the launch to uncover what truly takes drive, adoption, measurable outcomes, and long-term success.
Today on Beyond the Launch, we are joined by someone who has spent his career at the intersection of public safety, technology, and innovation. Our guest is Scott MacDonald, founder and CEO of GovWorx, a company focused on transforming how emergency dispatchers are trained, evaluated, and supported through responsible artificial intelligence. Scott's journey didn't begin in a boardroom. It started on the front lines. He served as a firefighter and later as an emergency communications supervisor, gaining firsthand insight into the pressures faced by people who answer the call when communities need help the most. From there, Scott spent more than 2 decades shaping the technology behind modern emergency communications in senior product leadership roles at Motorola, TriTech Software Systems, and Power DMS. But Scott didn't stop at building systems. He began asking a deeper question. How do we better shape the people behind the headset, the radio, and the badge? And that brings us to the heart of today's conversation. Behind every successful product, project, and innovation in public safety is something deeper than technology. It's the people. Today, we're going to explore what it takes to build that kind of ecosystem where customers become collaborators, partners become co-creators, and diverse perspectives lead to stronger products, better projects, and ultimately better outcomes for the people we serve. Scott, welcome to Beyond the Launch.
Thank you, Ivan. I am beyond honored to be here and excited for the discussion today.
So, Scott, I'm going to go back when we first met. I believe it was two years ago at the APCO conference, and I came to your booth, and we spent about an hour, and I was enamored at the conversation and your depth of understanding of quality assurance. And I went up to my hotel room and actually came back to your booth. And one of the things that I walked away with is understanding of your mission and vision, and the fact that you wanted to build teams to drive that mission and vision. And so I've noticed as of late, you're really focused on building a variety of feedback loops in a variety of landscapes to help achieve customer success. So my first question is, what inspired your focus on building teams that intentionally include customers and partners from diverse backgrounds?
So I think one of the most important lessons I've learned in 30 years now in public safety, and it seems very, very long time when you say 30 years, is that no two organizations anywhere do things the exact same way. Whether we're talking about a public safety agency, whether we're talking about a private company, and it's not just that police is different than fire or a small agency is different from a large agency, because a 3-position center in rural Nebraska will operate completely differently than a 3-position center in Utah or one even right down the road, in the same county. So
Right.
public safety is incredibly local and it's incredibly experience driven. And when you look at the people that make up these organizations in those experiences and the locality of it, if you don't bring together a diverse group of people from different geographies, from different demographics, from different generations even, then you're
Right.
missing out on what is the entire population of a market that you're trying to serve, a customer that you're trying to serve, and more importantly, the mission that you're trying to achieve. So if I want to build product and offer services and innovate to serve agencies of all different sizes, structures, geographies, then I have to understand those differences. And as an individual, none of us are able to understand all of those differences because we haven't lived them. So from the beginning, it was really important for me not to just bring in customers with those perspectives, but team members with those perspectives, board members with those perspectives, to be able to educate myself and influence the company and where we go beyond just what I'm capable of.
So, Scott, your willingness to include diverse perspectives doesn't just include your internal teams, but your willingness to work across the bow with competitors. Why is that?
So that is really interesting, right? Many people will call me crazy for that. But again, in public safety in general, we're actually not a massive landscape of companies and people and agencies. It's somewhat finite when you compare it to, a B2B type of industry or a business to consumer type of industry. It's well defined and it's fairly small. And what I've found is you can be a friend to a competitor. You can actually learn from your competition and have them learn from you sometimes, ideally in a good way. But by including competitors, by including those that do things that may overlap in some areas and may complement in others, in your perspective, not only are you seeing what you're able to do for the industry, you're able to actually see where you can stand out and do things a little bit better for achieving your mission, right? So that's always been big to me, is to have that friendly competition where we're all out serving a little bit of a higher purpose. We wake up in the morning knowing our mission is to actually help those whose mission is actually saving lives. So that gives us a little bit of a higher sense of purpose. And I think being able to include others who are doing the same in your mission is important.
Yeah, I've heard you say that you'll be glad to see the day that all of us could work together collectively for a shared mission, and I really appreciate that perspective. How does diversity of perspective directly influence in product innovation and improvement?
So I truly believe true innovation only happens with diverse perspective, right? I mean, it happens it's a little cliche, but it happens at the intersection of experiences. Again, those are lived experiences, those are generational experiences, demographic experiences. It's the intersection of all of those where innovation actually occurs, right? Imagine for a minute if you're in a room and you're building a product or you're designing a product, and everyone from that development team all went to the same schools. They lived in the same neighborhoods growing up. They were using the product in the exact same way. Regardless of what you're building, you're not innovating. At that point, you're almost hallucinating what you think others want and what others do, because you're only able to see what you know and what you've experienced, right? So for building a product or building a service or coming up with an idea or building a company, and you're going to truly innovate, you have to have that diversity of perspective. You have to have that diversity of all of the other elements that other people bring in.
Yeah, that is so important to understand. I was doing an implementation in the city of Detroit, and I can tell you when I walked into the room, they talked a lot about how their citizens were different in the way that they understood certain things when it came to the 911 system. And I had an opportunity to sit on the floor, and they were absolutely correct. And so I had to adjust some of my ways of thinking and approach to be able to meet them at the finish line. Can you share a real world example where diverse collaboration significantly improved a project outcome?
Yeah, and I think I'll share an example that is personal to me, but then let's just kind of frame it a little bit of an example that everyone knows about, regardless of the industry you're in. So there's a framework out there, kind of that the multi-lens framework, that says you really need to look at things from all of these different perspectives as we're discussing. And it's only by looking at it through those multiple lenses that you're able to actually see things from the perspective of everyone that's involved. So a great example, maybe outside of emergency communications to start with. Think for a minute about rideshare. Uber, Lyft. Prior to rideshare, there was kind of one way to get around that wasn't public transportation or private, it was taxis. And the taxi system was built around truly just a system where everyone was behaving the exact same way. And it all kind of worked through the lens of just the system. Now you introduce rideshare, Uber or Lyft or something like that, and you have to take in the perspective of drivers, of
Right.
riders, of payment systems, of cell phone providers and operating system providers. But more importantly, you have to get even more granular and say, I want to view this from the rider that is a male rider and a female rider, where safety are very different things that they think about, generational differences between them. And
Right.
it's only when you start to look at things from those multiple lenses that you can actually start to see successes for not just one group of people, but for all groups of people.
Right.
Let me equate it now to something in our world of 911 emergency communications. As you said, we started off with a goal of being able to leverage some of the newest technologies out there in AI to help do what seems like some of the most fundamental things in the world, which is QA and evaluations, evaluating what's said on, 911 calls, on radio traffic, call taker performance, dispatch performance, what they did really well, where they needed some support. And quickly what we found was not every evaluator sees things the same way. In fact, hardly any two evaluators see things in the same way. But more importantly, those who are receiving feedback need to receive that feedback in very different ways. So when we set out, we thought of, okay, we're going to have the system do an evaluation. It'll route to a human when necessary to kind of give it its blessing, and then just boom, deliver that right to the telecommunicator. Wow, could we have been more wrong in the beginning? Because every one of us, again, depending on all of those different things that make us different, our age, our experience, our demographics, we need to receive feedback very differently. So certain generations need feedback to be delivered verbally. They need it to be a mix of both positive and constructive, and it needs to be continuous. Maybe other generations, like as old as I am, I'm good with the feedback that can come in a report once a month saying, hey, here's what you did, here's what you need to work on, sign off and go. But every single person is a little different. So one of the things that we had to do right away was get those different perspectives from different generations, from different experiences, from different centers, and really start to understand what was making some of the human evaluation a little bit more biased. Inherently, we have biases when we listen to something, when we look at something, there's nuances in it that just make us feel, well, this we're overly critical here, or we're too favorable here. So we had to take in all of these different perspectives over the first 20 or 25 customers that we worked with and said, now let's modify workflows. Let's modify how feedback gets delivered, and let's let them tailor that to the individual. Because if our mission is to help improve the profession and the people of 911, we have to make sure that the information that we're giving to them, the feedback that we're giving to them, is received in a way that they can actually use it and benefit from it.
So, Scott, I did my homework, and you're doing roughly 12 to 15 new customers a month right now.
Yes, yes, yes.
So with that type of traction, what is your plan for continuing to think along the lines of having diverse teams that you tap into for that customer feedback?
Yeah, so it's really, really important, I think, not just in the beginning of a company or a project to get that diverse opinion, but to keep it ongoing and to keep it so that it becomes almost operationalized, right? Meaning every customer we bring on, right? Every agency, regardless of size and what they're doing, and even the product set that they're using, they all have valuable feedback for us. We've intentionally built out a success team and an onboarding team, and soon to be announced a client account team that is really just going to be charged with not just keeping the relationship going, but keeping that feedback loop going every time we get a new customer, because everyone has some valuable points to bring. And unfortunately, technology in our space oftentimes has been very much, I won't say out of date, but slow to evolve. Having come from someone who did CAD systems for 20 years, for a lot of reasons, some technologies are harder to innovate in because they're so ingrained in operation, right? But when we
Right.
have an opportunity like we have today with new technology that can still do so many great things, that can actually improve every week if you get the right people giving you input and you get enough people giving you that input. So that's how we see continuing to do it as we grow, is by continuing to keep that feedback loop, something that doesn't just end as soon as they're live on our product.
Scott, overall, do you believe your approach to diverse perspectives is helping achieve adoption and customer success?
I definitely do. And this is very, very interesting, the reasons why I feel that way, right? So if you look at our customer team, right, whether it's in onboarding, whether it's in adoption, whether it's in support, right, more than 95% of them have come from centers that have been either in the chair or they've been as a QA person or as a supervisor or as a director, right? But none of them have come from the same center intentionally. Most of them have come from literally different parts of the country, right? From New Jersey to California to Texas, to be able to actually have some level of experience that's shared with all of these different customers, right? So what we need to make sure we keep doing, right, is keep, as we add team members and need more staff here, is to continue to build that staff out in a way that can actually relate to all of these different experiences that are out there, generational, demographic, geographic, you name it. And that's what we're trying and attempting to keep doing.
So Scott, I'm a strong believer in inclusion and laying the groundwork for diversity in perspectives. I've also been in a room where that creates bottlenecks. So what challenges do organizations face when trying to build inclusive cross-functional teams, and how can they overcome them?
Yep. I think probably one of the biggest barriers and one of the biggest challenges is that organizations tend to kind of invite people to the table, but then all of the decisions are made at one level. Meaning, okay, we're going to bring you all in, we're going to get all of your perspectives, but still it's going to be a single person or a few people that are not necessarily part of the diverse experience that are in the room making all of those decisions. And it's just easy to kind of default to that position because otherwise it feels like, well, it just becomes too much chaos. Everyone's making these decisions. You can find the right balance. You can actually start to operationalize that diverse experience, that diverse input, that diverse feedback, and do it in such a way that really you're demonstrating to the entire organization how individual feedback, how collective feedback in certain areas are actually being used to make those decisions. And that only can come if you make the commitment to not allow yourself to get bottlenecked, because if I'm the only one making the decision in the company, I've still only got one lived experience, right? Even if I'm surrounded by all these people, I'm still this one guy that has come up in my career and from the world from one perspective, right? So yes, I need to take input. I can guide direction. I can make certain decisions, but for the ones that matter the most to our users, to our customers, to our success, I have to be able to get the people that are giving me the input to help make those decisions with me.
Absolutely. So how can leaders ensure that diversity of thought impacts not just products and projects, but also company culture and long-term success?
I think probably the most critical way to do it is to make sure that you're not just getting diverse team members, but you're actually infusing it at every level of the organization, from board members to advisory board members to team members that you're pulling in to customers. But probably more importantly and most importantly, we all know that the success of companies are based on how people see decisions being made and they see how behavior is rewarded. I mean, I can say anything I want to my teams. They aren't necessarily going to just believe what I say. They're going to believe what I do, and they're going to believe the actions that I take. So if I'm actually rewarding those things that I believe in are contributing to success and contributing to diverse opinions and experience, then I think the rest of the organization is going to see how important that is versus me just saying, hey, I want everyone's opinion. Everyone's, input is valid. No, it's actually me rewarding diverse opinions and then taking action on those opinions every day. So that's how I think we can start to operationalize a lot of that. And that's what we're attempting to do at all levels, from board level down to individual contributor, down to the success teams and our support teams and our development teams.
Yep, Scott, I've really had to learn everything of what you just said in my own leadership, being able to take a step back, letting others lead the journey and lead the vision as they come up with the ideas through creativity. And
Yep.
so what you just said is so, so strong. Looking ahead 5 to 10 years, What does a truly collaborative ecosystem between public safety agencies, technology partners, and the people doing the work in the front lines look like?
So to me, it's comprised of two major elements that are actually becoming a reality. As technology continues to evolve, AI especially, it's opening up literally more opportunities every day. Having been in the industry not quite as long as I have, you're not nearly as old as I am, but you know that there's this old saying that is, based on what's happening in the commercial or consumer world, it's not going to touch public safety for 5 to 7 years, right? It takes 5 to 7 years to catch up. AI is accelerating that now, right? And public safety is almost on par with consumers and with businesses with the technology that's out there. One way to keep that going is collaboration across vendors, collaboration across teams, collaboration between customer and vendor alike. And I think one of the ways to continue to do that is to have forums that maybe don't necessarily even exist today, right? There are great organizations out there that are helping the industry, from the APCOs and the NINAs, right, that are really collaborating and bringing practitioners together. And there are others like iCert and others that are bringing in vendors to collaborate, right? I think if every one of those organizations really start to come together and say, we can continue to ride this technology train together and see just how far it can advance the profession, the industry by collaboration, that's something that is pretty meaningful. We know we've had industry collaboration events as it's related to like rollout of Next Gen 911, right? Where it did great work in bringing together very focused effort in certain areas. Let's elevate those and have true industry collaboration events across all different types of technologies and needs. That's one way where I see 5 years from now, we can really advance not just the profession, but the service that everyone provides to their communities as well.
Absolutely. So, after everything you've learned building companies, products, and partnerships, what leadership lesson about people, not technology, has mattered the most?
Great question. So I think everyone's perspective is so critical to themselves. So I see my perspective and I believe in my perspective. You have your perspective and you believe in your perspective. It's only when I can take a little bit of a step back sometimes and say, all right, I may not share your perspective exactly, but I know that you believe in it as much as I believe in mine, which means it's weighted equally. And it's that type of view, I think, that I've learned the most to be able to take a little bit of a step back and not necessarily see it from your lens, because I can't see it from your lens, but realize that what you're seeing through your lens is as important to you as mine is to me, right? And I think that's a lesson that took a while to learn. And it's not just from team members and from advisors, but from customers. And that's a really big thing from a technology vendor perspective is, we don't have that same in the seat view anymore. At least I don't for many years. I have to remember that what they're seeing every day, what they see on the screen, the user experience that they have, the challenges that they have is critically important to them. And when I can recognize that and then listen to them, knowing that that's important, that makes all the difference.
Everyone, Scott MacDonald of GovWorx, excellent conversation. Scott, would love to have you back again, and just great dialogue as always.
Well, thank you. I've been really happy to be here, and thanks for putting this together, and really excited for your work.
Thank you.